Hey, Craig Dostie here with Dostie's View, and today I just wanted to talk about some things related to backcountry skiing. You probably know I'm foremost a backcountry skier, but I love to telly because when you telly, it's always knee deep, right? And that makes the powder experience, to me anyway, and if you're a telemarketer, I know you agree, it makes it a much richer, deeper, prolonged, sensual experience. And the best place to get that kind of experience is not inbounds at a resort. It is in the backcountry. So, if you're going to be going in the backcountry, you need to do a couple things. One, you need to get some climbing skins. You've already got a Freeheel, although I recommend you get a free pivoting binding like Outlaw or Switchback or Axle or Lynx or Meijo or a Telemark Tech System binding. And climbing skins. And then you also need a beacon, a shovel, and a probe. And to learn how to use an avalanche beacon, really the best thing to do is to sign up and take an avalanche course. But after that, you still need to practice. I mean, 1 3-day course is not enough to become really proficient with this. And even though I've been reviewing these and following them for years, I know that I have to, every season at the beginning, go through and just reacquaint myself, familiarize myself so that I'm fluent and I'm not double checking, well, did I do this right? Did I do that right? And just to kind of reorient, because here's the thing. These are transceivers. They are transmitters and receivers, not simultaneously. They're one or the other. And the way they work is you turn them on and they go into transmit mode automatically. That's their default on position. This is the BCA Tracker 3. I really hate that their audio cues, but I like everything else about this, all right? And so anyway, when you get a beacon, make sure you get a modern one that has 3 antennas. That way you don't have to be very precise about your orientation. You will pick up a signal no matter how you hold the beacon. Whereas if you use an older beacon, especially a single antenna analog beacon, you got to be really well practiced, all right? So to practice, what I do is I don't recommend, at least initially, although you can do this, going to a ski resort where they have dedicated beacon basins where you can hunt for pre-hidden beacons, which that's great. It's great, okay? But that doesn't teach you or help you orient to how this works. So, like I said, you turn it on, it's in transmit mode. What is happening is it's not transmitting all the time. It's only transmitting a pulse once every 1/10 of a second. You might be able to see this light here. And so whenever you see that light going on, it's actually transmitting. And when you don't see it on, it's not transmitting. So it's putting out a pulse. And it's putting out a pulse at 457 kilohertz, which in the electromagnetic spectrum is pretty low, which means the wavelength is really big. And if you don't know electromagnetics, that doesn't mean anything to you. But what that translates into is, unlike your phone that works in the gigahertz region, or many other electronic devices these days, this is a very low frequency, and when you are within the usable range, okay, you're operating in what's called the near field, and the magnetic component of the electromagnetic signal dominates. You may have seen patterns of a magnet underneath a piece of paper with some iron filings sprinkled about, and what you'll get is these concentric circular rings going out, and those are emanating from the long antenna here on every beacon, all right? And just during the pulse, and then it's off, and during the pulse, and then it's off. And so when you are searching, when you're practicing, you're going to put your beacon into search mode. All right, so now this is searching. I've got a beacon just outside of range here, and this is, oh, look at that. So it's telling me there's a beacon here. I don't know if you can read that. 2.5 meters away, and there's an arrow pointing down to where it is. And that's the beauty of these wonderful modern 3-antenna digital beacons, is that they do a lot of the computation for you. So you don't have to think too much, but you still need to have some idea of what's going on, which is why I recommend that you practice. And so these beacons, modern beacons, will tell you which way to go and how far away you are. Now, because of the circular pattern that is transmitted, it's not always a line of sight path that leads you into the transmitting victim's beacon. It's usually a circular path, especially in the last 20 to 30 meters. So you need to become familiar with how that is going to transpire as you're searching. And it depends upon which way the victim's beacon is oriented, as well as yours to it. And so what I recommend you do is you set up a really simple scenario. You need to go out into an open field that's far away from power lines, any underground data lines. You want no electromagnetic interference, all right? And then what you should do is just set up a range and mark off distances from where you're going to place the victim beacon, right? And then what you do is you mark it at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 meters, and then you can jump to every 10. 40 meters, 50 meters, 60 meters, 70 meters. Very few beacons will pick up a signal reliably at 70 meters. You might go to 80 just to test it, right? And then what you do is put one beacon at the end of the range, and I would align it in line with the range, so the long axis is in line with the range. Go out to the far end, turn your beacon on to search, and see when you pick up the beacon. Notice that. That is a parallel orientation. You're probably aligned the same way as the transmitting beacon. And then walk in and notice how the beacon may direct you off into a circular path into finding where you're at, right? Then change it 90 degrees and go back and do it again. You'll probably notice a slightly different range depending upon what beacon you are receiving with. Some of them have a fairly circular pattern. They're the same whether it's this way or that way. Some are more elliptical, so you'll have a shortened range. And then put it vertically. Then you will definitely see a decrease in range. But that's one of the things you need to notice and become familiar with, because when you're searching in a real rescue scenario, you don't want to be confused. You need to be familiar and competent with your beacon. Once you're familiar with the different orientations for a single transmitting beacon, get a second one and put it like, I don't know, 5 to 10 meters away, and change the orientation and make it the same and make it the opposite. Just keep playing around with it. And you may not have that many beacons. So the real answer to this, and this will help all of you, is get a little beacon barbecue together. Invite, 3 or 4 of your buddies who you normally tour with or who you intend to tour with, and do some beacon practice together and compare the differences between your beacons, because you definitely want to know how to use this if you need to use it. And especially if you're going into the backcountry in the winter months when powder is more likely, because that's when avalanches are more likely. If you can wait until the spring, you would still want to bring this as general protocol, but usually the avalanche hazard subsides dramatically. And if you have not gone on the backcountry much or ever, I highly recommend you kind of wait till the end of the season to dip your toe in the water. Maybe take a class in the meantime, getting prepared, getting ready, okay? So that's my tip for today. talk at you next time about shovels. And until then, get down on your knees and let's all spread Telemark.